Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Witty Writers Show. I am so sorry about our technical difficulties. Good old Facebook. But please welcome our guest today, Gary Roen. Hello, Gary.
Yeah, I'm putting this here, so there. That's better.
Awesome. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, Gary. Now, everybody, Gary Roen is an author and also a professional book critic. You've been in the business for, oh my gosh, how many years now? 45?
Beyond count, going back to the 1970s.
That is absolutely amazing. I can't believe the joys of social media. This is what us authors have to deal with, isn't it, Gary? I tell you, it drives me insane. But I am so thrilled to have you with us today. You've been on an amazing literary journey because not only are you an author yourself, but you also, as I said, are a professional book critic as well. Now, where did your interest in literature start? Where did it all come from, and what inspired you, Gary?
Well, I come from a writing family. My dad was a writer. He was in entertainment with MCA in the 40s. Came down here to Orlando, set up a talent agency. Then he did all kinds of PR. Of course, there's writing there. Then he converted over to being a true crime writer and writing articles. And he did only nonfiction. I can do nonfiction. I can do poetry. I can write short stories. And I just enjoy the short stories that I write that are science fiction. And I wrote quite a few many years ago in the 80s and 90s, but returned to college, and I'm kind of a misfit, and I find that so many writers are. We just, for some reason, don't fit in exactly in the square peg, or we're the round person, but people adore the writing that we do. So I went back to college, to University of Central Florida, often called You Can't Finish. I finished. I call it You Can Finish, and I encourage anyone that goes back to UCF or goes there, hey, it's tough, but you'll get through and you can finish. And I joke about it, but it's true. So I value UCF. I value a teacher that I had in the junior high named Dr. Shank. I thank my parents, my brother, my sisters for giving me a wealth of information on other things. And then just being able to do what I do. And I remember Robert Newton Peck. I reviewed some of his books. He was a very well-known, great writer. He asked me to come to one of his classes that he was teaching at Rollins College. I went, and he made a statement. He said, "You are like a TV camera, always taking everything in. Yeah. Then at another time, you're going to use something that you took in." I took that to heart. And when I go out, no matter where I go, I have notepads, because somebody will say something, somebody will do something. And, the one that you read, Gun, started as just a simple conversation between a guy who wants to kill another guy. And it started that way. And then I just built the story around it and worked it a little more. It's a story you saw. It's a very short one. But I learned also short stories can be as short as 66 words. I know, because I have several of them in my collections, in each collection at the end, just to prove that I can do it. And I was at a major convention we have here in Orlando called MegaCon, and I was sitting next to somebody, and I said, "Hey, I heard there's a contest or something going on about, you write a short story, it has to be 66 words. And it was a friend of mine. She said, yes, and I'm the editor. So I came up with this, and it is exactly 66 words. And it's identity theft. I got crushed, and now my whole little round green body is purple, filled with pain, and I mean it hurts. My entire insides feel like liquid, and I'm being married to many others I don't even know. Now I'm a prisoner in a clear, like substance. Oh, woe is me. What has happened? I was green. Now the Welch's name is all over me.
That is amazing. I tell you, you have a gift, Gary. And when I read your story, Gun, I was blown away because you managed in a short story, you managed to create such drama and suspense, and I had no clue where the story was going. It was so good, so good. So I think it's an absolute talent. It is so hard for most authors to be able to condense a story.
But you have it too. You have it too, because we started on Facebook, and a lot of people, they go, oh, Facebook, oh yeah. I've met a lot of authors on Facebook, and I love it. And we're doing this today because of Facebook. So it's a great resource for writers. It not in the sense of testing out your writing, but just gaining friendships and relationships with other authors. And in my case, getting more and more people to send me books. But what is amazing to me is it doesn't cost very much. It just costs you, the author, the price of the book to send it to me, because I don't do electronic versions. And so, and that's a requirement of some of the publications I have. We don't do the PDF versions. We don't do electronic ones. So, but the industry is leaning towards that, but we're still doing the physical book. And as far as I'm concerned, I want the physical book.
Yeah.
There's nothing better than a new book comes in. I take it first and I smell it because I like the smell. I love the smell of a brand new book. And there was an author in Brevard County that I met, and she had that exactly of a reader. It's a young girl, and she smells every book that she gets as brand new. It's just a trait that readers have of books. So, you know, I just love what I do, but like Robert Newton Peck said, I am like a camera focused in on something that somebody says, does, or whatever. And a friend of mine had a statement that for years he would say, and he would come up with Frick Frock from the planet Frangus. That's all he had. And so recently I wrote Frick Frock from the planet Frangus had no idea he was a monster. To others, he was. It was only a question of time before it would be revealed to everyone else but him. Oblivious to it, he dealt with life in a manner that was totally normal to him. So it's a whole story, and it started out as a story on racism, but there was a trick that I had to accomplish with it. And his name is Frick Frock. I created a character from a little purple octopus that I have that's in the room here. And I named her Aki because I got her on my birthday. So I named the character Okie Tokie.
Oh,
then I hit a stumbling block, but it was a good thing because it was going to be a story strictly about racism. Then I can't stand racism. I can't stand the whole thing of hating somebody because of some minor reason. And most of the time it's jealousy or it's something that the person has inside of themselves. So it started as that. But and I didn't know the character name I wanted for it, but when I had Obo Kobo, it began. It took place, and I based it on something I knew about. With the first character, he's blue on the planet Frangus. And of course, Okie Tokie's purple because of the octopus she came from. Then Obo Kobo is orange, and he hates that he's orange, but he can't do anything to change it, which came from what I'd heard about Jewish men who hate that they're Jewish, cannot stand it, will not convert, and go after other Jewish people and other people just because they've got this anger of what they are. So then it became, no, not the racism per se. It became, what's the motivation of the bully? Then there's a character that he goes after, and he continually goes after these people, different people on this planet Frangus. And he gets his in the end. I won't say how, but the trick was that I had to come up with different names, and one of those was Sally Valley, because each name had to rhyme.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what the trick is that somebody told me, but that was the motivation also, so that you remember each name. But Obo Kobo was the most fun one to write because he's so bad. He gets on a train and he gets his ticket, or he has to show his ticket, so he throws it down on the ground in the train, and then when the ticket conductor is trying to get the thing off the floor, Obo Kobo kicks him and knocks him down, and he says something nasty to this guy, and he says something like, "That's what you get for being mean to me." The guy wasn't mean or anything. It's just, this is a vicious guy.
Yeah.
And so I came up with different things, and I was working on it. And then somebody and I went to Olive Garden, and I saw the name of a restaurant. I thought, "Ooh, that's a nice name," but it wasn't the actual name. But I called the restaurant the Lick It restaurant, and it was supposed to be just a bar and restaurant, and that's where the end of the story takes place. Other people have read it and said, "I didn't see it coming." That's what I want. I want Twilight Zone.
Yeah,
because I grew up with the Twilight Zone. I grew up with Ian Fleming, James Bond's, and what is so nice is the Ian Fleming estate has published all kinds of things, and they're not just in control of the Bond movies. They're still publishing Bond books. And recently I reviewed on His Majesty's Secret Service, and it's a present day novel of James Bond when the king is crowned, the whole festivities that took place this year.
Wow.
And what Bond has to do, and the author wrote it in very much like Ian Fleming, because I can tell the difference between the writing of Ian Fleming and other writers who take it on. And only a few have accomplished it where it's very much like it. And when you're working in somebody else's universe, you got to be very careful of what you do. That's why I enjoy doing my own stuff. Everything I write is my own stuff. And that's as it should be. But a lot of writers, they write Star Trek novels, they write everything, but there's certain restrictions that you have. And I remember J.M. Dillard wrote several of them, and she'd meet the fans and they go, "Oh, I love this, and you did this and this and this." She says, "I did," because a good writer forgets the story, basically. I mean, most of it, because they're always going on to something new.
Yeah, agreed. I tell you, you are so right. And we've got some questions and stuff for you, Gary, if you don't mind. We've got the fabulous Suzanne Monet, another amazing author. This is in relation to you doing school and getting your degree. She says, "Good for you. You finished and nobody can take that away from you." Oh, that is so awesome. She is She's lovely. Her books are amazing.
Yeah.
We've also got Jennifer Goins, another fantastic, lovely lady. She says, hi from Kentucky. And she has a question for you. She says, did you always want to be a writer or something else?
No, always wanted to be a writer. Always, because I grew up reading Ian Fleming and others, and I had a background in junior high of the classics, and I always wanted to be a writer. And now I'm retired and doing exactly what I want. And my book, Journey, is on Amazon as a Kindle. Slotski's World is there. My other book, The Forgotten Father, Coping with Grief, is there. And that can be, that's a book of poetry I wrote back in the 80s. And I managed to get things done because I make friendships with so many different types of people. And that's what you have to do in this industry too. Plus, if you have the belief that that's what you want to do, work towards it. I mean, there are other things that I worked in, but it gave me the whole thing of this character of Slotski Bear, because I worked in market research for a long time. I actually saw this teddy bear, and he was fierce looking. He was kind of disgusting. And I don't know, that night I went out to a Hooters and I had the wings and everything. And the idea for it just came up. And what I started writing was, and I started writing on a menu of Hooters. And if I could find that, it'd be worth something. But
when inspiration strikes.
Yeah, and it's teddy bears are usually adorably cute, cuddly little creatures who fill up a person's bed. Their bodies frequently clothed in nice outfits like goggles and leather flight jackets, a favorite team, or a doctor complete with facial mask. Their faces and eyes can charm even the coldest of hearts. Slotski Bear fit none of these characteristics. His mouth stayed open to expose fang-like teeth. His hands and feet were razor-sharp claws, and the sight of him was not at all appealing. In fact, he was rather frightening, so much so that children were too scared of him. Even his size of 5'2" was just too intimidating to adults as well. He lay on a trash pile waiting to be taken to the dump.
That is so awesome. Do you know, the moment you started reading, I could just start picturing him in my mind, and that is such a, I mean, that is the sign of a great writer, is when you can just visualize what they're describing to you, and it's amazing, isn't it, how inspiration will just hit you.
Oh, it is. And you know, I was in another restaurant, and the waitress, cute thing, goes walking by, and she sneezed or something. And you know, I thought, and I saw her walking by, and I said, such a loud noise from such a little person. Well, it appeared in a Slotski story, and it's a little girl. She's walking home, and she meets the bear, and she starts yelling and screaming, and she's running away to get away from the teddy bear. And she's so frightened of him because he is so fierce looking. And he says, such a loud noise from such a little person. And so, but the thing about Slotski is there's something that lives inside of him. And when people have a problem, they don't know why they're picking him up. And it's always on a trash pile. And he's always returned to one. And that's the beauty of the stories, because it's a constant ongoing cycle. So he is picked up, and he makes them pick him up. And they don't know why, but there's something that lives in him. And each person has something going on in their life that he has to help fix. And I love writing these stories, but I also enjoy writing ones that don't have him in them, because I don't want to get jaded and not want to and only be known for writing Slotski stories.
Yeah.
You know, Ian Fleming wrote The Spy Who Loved Me, and it was a total departure anything of the other Bond novels. And Bond doesn't come into late into it, and he kills a couple of thugs, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I love the concept. I love the concept. And it's great because it's limitless. Everybody has so many different types of issues that they're dealing with through life. So you've left it wide open for him to have more adventures with more people with more different types of issues. And I absolutely love that. I absolutely love that. Now, how on earth did you go from being an author to also being a professional book critic as well? I mean, how did that happen? Was it planned, or was it just happenstance?
No, that came about because there was a woman named Pat Flanagan who was on radio here on WDBO, and she said, let's do a show on Rollins College, WPRK. Let's do it about science fiction. We'll tackle reviews. We'll let people know what conventions are going on. We'll let people know who's coming in town. Let's do a show. So we did an hour show. And then I told her, let's expand this. Let's get some newspapers to run it. We have a tagline saying, listen to Spaceship PRK with Pat Flanagan and Gary Roen every week at this time. We did it for about 2 years, loved it. And then she went on, she moved up to Atlanta for a while, but I didn't write the columns at the time. Then I decided I'm going to write them. And I just branched out and wrote and was in the Orlando Sentinel, Florida Times Union, Miami Herald, Sun Sentinel in Fort Lauderdale, Tallahassee Democrat, Cleveland Plain Dealer, Philadelphia Inquirer, and Baltimore Sun were many of the ones. I even had one appear in Alaska in a publication because the book was about something that took place in Alaska.
Wow.
And the stories that I have of being a critic are so much fun. There was an author that I reviewed in Philadelphia, this author's hometown. The Inquirer sent me 2 books of this same author. One was a short story collection I loved. His big novel of that year, I hated because I felt he didn't tie things together. He didn't do what he was supposed to do. So I never thought I'd meet him, which I did. I went to ChiCon in Chicago, the WorldCon, and each year it's in a different world city because the fans put in a bid for it 5 to 7 years in advance. And so I got to go because my radio friend Dennis Moore is up there now and was up there. So I stayed with him. So I cut on the expenses, and then we just rode back and forth. So I knew that Playboy magazine was doing a party for it because one of the best resources for short stories was Playboy many years ago. And in fact, you know the movie Duel, that's Dennis Weaver and Stephen, what's his name? He did Jaws. Jaws.
It sounds super familiar. I think I might.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that movie came about because Richard Matheson wrote a short story that appeared in Playboy.
Oh, wow.
And that story was that a truck driver takes on this driver on the road. That's basically what the movie is.
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg. So Spielberg, that's his first film. So going back to Playboy, they had the finest science fiction writers writing all those years. Ian Fleming, Bond novels appeared there first. So I knew they were doing it. I called Playboy and got us in. And we're there, and I know the name of this author. And somebody told him who I am. He walks up and he says, you didn't get my protagonist right. You didn't get my antagonist right. You didn't read my book. I said, I read your book. He said, you did not. And the voice was more like what I'm doing now. You did not. You didn't read my book. You didn't get the protagonist right. You didn't get the antagonist right. You didn't read my book. I said, I read your book. He said, no, you didn't. Blah, 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 blah. I said, I'll end this rather abruptly. A review by a reviewer, male or female, is a personal opinion of the said work in question. He goes, leave or I'll get mad. So,
oh my gosh.
I met an author, Jack Williamson, who's one of the authors from the golden age of science fiction, wrote a lot of science fiction, was very well known. And he said, I've always wanted to ask a reviewer what you look for when you do a review. I said, well, I can't speak for all the critics or reviewers, but I look for author has to tell me a story with a beginning, middle, and an end. There was a pause, and he had a whole entourage. They were laughing. They thought that was hilarious. He says, that's what I've been trying to teach my writing classes for years. So I felt in good company, very good company.
Yeah.
And so then I met a woman, and I said, well, what do you write? And I mean, she's one of those, she struts around and everybody's watching her, you know. A blonde. Now this is a blonde story. And you don't fit. See. This one does. And I'll find out.
I do have my blonde moments, Gary, I'll tell you.
This was at an event in Orlando. And I walked up and I said, so who are you? She says, oh, I'm so-and-so. And what do you write? She says, horror. I write under the name Pauline Dunn. Now, everybody remember that name, Pauline Dunn.
Okay.
I looked at her. I said, read any good Dean Koontz lately? She goes, and kind of walks away. So I walk over to a table. There's all these authors sitting there, and I'm sitting with them. She comes up, Miss Dunn. She sits down. She gets bored with the conversation. She stands up, says, I'll be back. I said, okay, Arnold. Anybody knows the significance of those words?
Yes.
She had no clue.
Oh
No
God.
clue. I had to explain it to her, and in fact, go, oh, big buck, Terminator. She says, oh, okay. She comes back. We go through the whole process again. I do the Schwarzenegger again. She goes by. The next day here in Orlando, it's at the convention center. She comes out of a restroom and she says, something awfully strange about that restaurant. Well, I saw what she was coming from. I didn't say anything. And I said, what? She says, stalls on the wall. She came out of a men's room. Didn't even realize she was in a men's room. So now let me explain the Dean Koontz line. She and her sister thought they would get away with their plagiarism by taking a bunch of books and just taking parts here, parts here, parts here. And they were all Dean Koontz books, writing under other names.
No.
So when they got caught, they had to return all the royalties. They had to disband the partnership. They had to tell Kensington, their publisher, to withdraw all books from the stores and destroy them. And they had to take in trade journals all these things of apologies for what they did.
Oh my God.
Ben Bova told me one day, he was a major science fiction writer and a good friend, and he told me, well, after they got caught, they sent a letter to the attorney. What other names does he write under? That tells you they intended to do it again, but they didn't want to do it to Dean Koontz again.
That is crazy.
So that's the other thing, that you learn in this business, there's so many stories, there's so many fun things, and I've just rolled with the flow, so to speak. But I had the one of that, and I have it in this one, the Journey, and this is one I wrote for UCF, and let me see which one it is. Yeah, let's see. Let me see which one it is. Okay. I think it's called Kobe Dilemma, because I don't always remember everything. So,
well,
yeah.
as we said earlier, as a writer, you focus on one thing, and then as soon as that's done, you'll focus on the next thing, aren't you?
Wait a minute. No. But what I like, okay, yeah, this is it. It's the Kobe Dilemma. Yeah, Kobe. Yeah. Kobe Dilemma. Miss Kobe. Miss Colby comes into a detective's office and says she's going to Chicon and that she's afraid because she's gotten notes that say she is to be killed. Because she talks to the detective and says, well, we plagiarized Stephen King. Well, I used the meeting with her to build that story. And then another one that I wrote for college, UCF, I had in this collection, Computers, Lies, Legends, and Lores, a story called The Test. And it was the premise is you stick a guy in a room for 3 weeks, you give him Star Trek videos, you give him no ability to watch anything but what you program. You give him things to read and all this material, and he has no touch with the outside world. And I use the premise of a psychological test or whatever that was in psychology to be the underlying premise. And so he's in this place, and then he is told that he'll get out in 3 weeks. But, and he thinks, well, they always tell you they're studying this, but that's not what they study. But what could they be studying of me? And he's like, I hate Star Trek. Well, there's a reason they gave it to him, and I won't go into it. But anyway, that was called The Test. Well, I wanted to do another one, so I had a female character, and I researched a little bit while I was writing it at UCF, and everybody laughs and says, "Oh, God, I don't believe that." Well, it's the same scenario, and it's a Twilight Zone type story and a totally different ending. But what I researched was, I said to females all across the campus, if you're put in this situation, what would you do? What would be important to you if you're cut off from society for 3 weeks? And, what would be the most important criteria for you? Always having clean panties. That's what they said. Always having clean panties. So with the course, I learned to use a journal. I learned to research a bit more, and everything comes into that one. Now, the first one was called The Test. The second one is called the vivisection. Now, most people don't know what that word means, but I had a friend who's very into animals, and it's simply animal lab testing. But what the beauty of it is, and most of my titles are 1 words or 2 words, because I don't want people stumbling over a long title. So, and they're memorable, but the vivisection is very memorable, but it also has bearing on where the story goes. And so, and it's the same scenario, but a different set of circumstances at the end.
It's just
And I
amazing.
grew up, like I say, with the Twilight Zone and Steven Spielberg's amazing stories, and later they came along, and so they have all been influences in The Outer Limits. We can't forget that, and all of these, and let's not forget Star Trek.
Oh, I'm a self-confessed Trekkie. I
Yep.
love
Same
anything
here.
with Star Trek. I'm a
But I don't like Discovery. But I like Picard. Love Picard.
he's
That's the ultimate.
yeah,
And
I'm really enjoying his independent series right now as well. And I used to have, well, before he moved and had to downsize, I had a massive collection of Star Trek books because I love the shows and I love to read it as well.
Yeah.
But I've got to ask you, Gary, if you could, I mean, obviously, I know you're a huge fan of Ian Fleming, as well as other authors as well. You could sit down and have a chat with one of your favorite authors. Who would it be and what would you
Oh,
ask?
that's no fair. It's not fair because I have a lot of authors and I have actually met many of them. And actually, at science fiction conventions years ago, I actually hung out with them. And I always said to people going to a convention, you want to hang out in the bar? And they all laughed. They thought that was hilarious. Well, I remember that there was an author in New Orleans, and we hung out together, and he and I were both Donald E. Westlake fans, and we're talking about Westlake books while we're in the bar, and we have this whole, and it wasn't a panel discussion, it wasn't anything, but we had our own discussion, and people were coming in and just standing around listening to us. And he wrote a short story and says, Mr. Critic, can I get you to review this? I said, sure. He says, this is going in a collection with a doll collection, DAW collection of mothers for Mother's Day. And it's a story where there's two starship commanders. They're going to blow themselves out of the universe they're in. And one of them gets a communication from his mom. She says stuff like, what are you doing? And it just broke me up,
Oh my gosh, I love that. Now I've got to ask you, the reason I asked you that question, and I know you've been asked it a lot, but it was leading me up to this question, and that is, it's strange how, I mean, I think to myself, it's fascinating how you cannot predict by the way somebody looks or by their mannerisms. You can't look at that and base that on what you think that they might write, because what goes on in their head is can be completely different. Have you met authors of books that you've read and suddenly you're face to face with them and thought, wow, I wasn't expecting that, they're completely different to what I pictured when I read their book? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, E.L. Doctorow. I thought, hey, this is a great author, but wow, I met him. I was like unimpressed. I listened to his speech. I said, what the hell did he say? He just rambles and rambles and rambles. That's the way his writing is. He wrote Ragtime. When they did the movie, they took out all the non-essential stuff that he puts in there and made a movie, and it's a decent movie. Billy Bathgate was one of his. And they had Dustin Hoffman star in that, and it was a great film. You read the book. What's he saying?
Interesting.
And author Peter Straub. I can't read anything by Peter Straub. And I used to love Stephen King, but I can't read anything by Stephen King because he's so long-winded now because he worked with Peter Straub. And I don't believe in writing teams because I experienced that several times. And as I'm going to say, it's improper English, but it's proper for me. It don't work. for me at least.
Yeah. Yeah.
It has to be a special team that works together, who's on a united front. I had one, and this person was a good person, but was committed to other things. And when we had a book signing for the book that the two of us did together, this person couldn't even show up for the signing. And we had people lining up at the store and coming in to sit where the talk was going to be. And this person is 45 minutes late.
Oh my gosh.
And I told this person, we're done. And had another writer that I worked with, different circumstances, but I couldn't work with this one either. So I can't work with other writers because they don't have the same mindset that I do to get it done and do it. Either they're writing the article and I'm getting us the articles because that's sometimes the way the team is, or we're both writing, but I do my own stuff. And and that's the way it has to be for me, at least. And I see that James Patterson has all these other writers, but what he does, it's a bit different, is he gets the basic, he gives them the basic concept, and then they write it in the form that is his, and then they master it. And he's got several that he writes with and has, and they're decent books, but I just don't read much of him anymore because I don't have time. Because if I only read James Patterson, that's all I'd be reading.
Yeah. And I didn't know that about his team, actually. Oh, that's really interesting. We've got some more comments. Let's have a look. So we've got the fabulous Connie. She is absolutely wonderful. She says, hello, sorry I'm late. It doesn't matter, Connie. You're here now, my darling. And she says, Beth, absolutely love your accent. You are beautiful. Oh, you've made my day. You've made my day. We've also got Libby, who's an author. She says, good morning from down under. Hi, Gary. Welcome, Libby. Thank you for joining us. She says, oh, hi, Beth. Thank you, darling. And Connie says, happy to have you here, Gary. Oh,
thank you.
So super sweet. Now, I've got to say, Gary, I mean, you're such a well-rounded professional author, professional book critic, etc. You've had an amazing career and your books have got brilliant reviews. What do you enjoy most about being a professional critic and an author? Do you get to do lots of do you get to do book events and things that most authors don't normally do? What's the benefits for you?
Well, I like it all. I don't, it's like people often ask me, who's my favorite author? I don't have one. I have many.
Yeah.
Same thing. I like all of it. But what I don't like, very simply, are authors who don't listen. I don't like, for instance, I had one of my editors tell me, hey, there's this book author here. Can you make contact with this girl and review the book? Fine. I made contact. I said, send a copy to this address. So she's so happy that it's going to be reviewed and saying that this editor and you or this publisher and you are the best. So she sends me an email and she's got a PDF file. And I told her, send the book. So I let the editor know where we were going with it because I sent back, sorry, I don't do PDFs.
Yeah.
And if you want me to review the book, send it to me and then I'll get to it. And, I'll let you know when it is reviewed. And personally that that's the way I work.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I always ask, would you do this to the Baltimore Sun? Would you do it to the Inquirer? Would you do it to the New York Times? Of sending a PDF unasked. And so, and when the critic tells you his or her procedure, you follow it. Then the second thing, once the book, when the critic says, I'll let you know when I receive it, you don't send a note to the critic saying, It's been delivered. When is it going to be reviewed? What they don't understand is there are maybe 100,000 books published each year. That's 100,000 books. I get many, many of them all year long, especially with self-published books that most places don't want to review because you have to deal with the author.
Yeah.
So I pick and choose. And if the author is a constant thorn in my side, I just say, that's it. I had one recently, and I had 3 books from her publisher. And I already reviewed one of them, told her I've already done something on this one. Do not send this one. Her publisher sent that one too. So that started off. So then I gave her my phone number, and she calls. Wants to discuss what religion I am, wants to because her book is a religious book. And so I'm nice, but there's a point, there's a limit. And so I let her go the last time after talking to her several times about different things. And I just said, no more. Blocked her on the phone, sent her a Facebook. And then all craziness started. She sends me, she sent me, an email. Apology. I said, fine. You burned your bridge. I don't want to review anything of yours, period. No more. We're done. Week later or so, another book of hers comes in. Another one from her publisher. Well, I have a relationship with her publisher because years ago I was an agent and got a book published through his company for an author who was a personal friend. So I sent to him all that's going on. He got back with me. Don't worry about it. He says he has people who are like that all the time, and just deal with it whatever way you want. I said, fine. I get a letter the other day. I have that informed delivery thing, and it told me it was from her. On the envelope it says apology. I thought, you sent me the stupid book. You did this, you did that. Now you're sending me the letter. And what part of no do you not understand? So I wrote on it, return to sender. I unblocked her from Facebook, sent her a message this long saying, all I'm going to do is I'm going to put on it, return to sender, so you can expect it back. Bye-bye. Do not bother me again. And blocked her again.
At some point, it gets to feel like
it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It gets ridiculous. And what you don't do is you don't ask, when is it going to be reviewed? Because the person has so many books they're dealing with. There are times where I don't even know which ones I'm going to do. And with yours, I wanted to do the series, all of them, but I was going to do it one at a time. But then I thought, well, I need this number of books for this month. So I did all 3 at one time. But I roared through your books.
Which I am so grateful for. I was so when you said you would like to review them, I was literally so happy. But your procedures are so straightforward. I mean, you told me exactly what you wanted sent.
Yeah.
Did it?
Yeah.
I mean, it was so straightforward. There's no, and the thing is, for me, I was just so grateful for you reviewing my books.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't mind how long it took you. I didn't want you to rush through them. I wanted you to just enjoy them. And
I enjoyed it because and I did the rush on it because of the writing. And you and I talked about it a little bit, but we won't go into that. But the fact is, it took me through. It was science fiction, and it was well done, and the premises. And I'll tell you honestly, the second one I think it was, I was seeing Cylons from Battlestar Galactica, the original. I was seeing the Borg characters of Star Trek, and so I knew the influence of what you were writing had to be somewhat Star Trek and Battlestar and all these other great things that we know in film. And there's nothing wrong with that because, but also Mike Resnick always said that what you do when you're building a universe, you base it something on this planet. So he based Ivory on Africa.
Yeah.
And his whole series called Ivory was based on Africa. And so, but that's the whole key. And so when I did Frangus, I just based it on what I know about humanity, and then what I know about bullies. And then I forget what I called the animal, but it was a Dogga, a Dogca, and it was the combination of dog and cat, and that's all it was. But it was a wild animal, and he goes in pursuit of it, and he's bad. But they say that serial killers and others that I based him on have always killed animals somewhere along their life because they've got no respect for humanity. They got no respect for animals. And so I took what I knew about things, and in Slotski's world, I have a story that takes place in Bel Air Hills here in Orlando, and I use the statement that I grew up with of Bel Air was always known as Pill Hill because of the doctors that all lived there. There were so many doctors. So it was just a reference to all the doctors. So I have part of the story take place in Pill Hill. But what I based it on was one of my dad's true crime murder cases that he wrote about. And it's a woman who kills and what she does of the different men and what this particular case did. And so I based it strictly on that one. And she gets hers in the end too.
You know what?
Then
You and
I
I
had a friend. I'm trying to think of her name. She was in. I liked her name so much that I said to her, "I'm going to use you in a story. I'm definitely going to use you in a story." Let me see. Let me find it because let me see. And then wait a minute. I have another one. Okay. Have another one. Okay, wait a minute.
That's all right. While you're looking for it,
Yeah.
Josephine, who's a very good friend of mine and a fabulous author, she says, "I'm here, late to the party. Better than never, Josephine." And she also says, "LOL, Battlestar and Trekkie, LOL, love them." I think that, I tell you, there are people who are big fans of the old sci-fi and don't admit it.
Oh yeah, and it's so good. Battlestar, the original.
Oh,
I don't really like the new one. I like Edward James Olmos as Adama. I like certain things about it, but what I don't like is I'd never liked the fact that you couldn't tell who the Cylon human was or the real human. I didn't like that. You should never ever play a game, and that's in all writing, and that's why I never liked Battlestar. And a lot of people didn't like it because, oh, well, Starbuck's a female and this one's a female. I don't care about that. What I care about is you tell me a good story and you make it so I want to watch it. Now, her name was Kim Rosamundo.
Oh,
I worked with her. I worked with Kim Rosamundo. And I said, Kim, you got such a great name. I'm going to use it as something. And she thought, yeah, right. I said, Kim, I'm a professional writer. She said, yeah, right. I said, Kim, I am. So when I wrote A Spider, I thought, I got to use this. So I had Kay Rosamondo of the Orlando Police Department.
I love
And
it.
she's in her Crown Vic and she's going down the street. And I read it to Kim and she's going. Because the other thing is, when I say to you that I'm going to use your name or something, you better believe I am. Remember, I read to you that the one of Trace's, Stacy and Myron Beagle. I was in a restaurant. I said to the bartender, "What's your name?" She's told me, and I said, all of a sudden I had Stacy and Myron Beagle. And
I love it. I love it. It's amazing where our inspiration comes from. It really is. Gary, can you believe that we've been live for an hour? It just goes.
no, I can't believe it. I can't believe
goes
it.
so quick.
Yeah.
It goes so quick. Gary, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh,
today.
yeah.
You
Thank you. Well, people can
awesome.
find this book, that's Slotski's World. And I want to say my publisher, he does the most fantastic covers.
They
Now,
are awesome. I
and-
love the blues and greys. It's just fabulous.
And see,
And they are.
this character's on a trash pile.
I love it.
And the little teddy bear by my hand here, he has more involvement. He has little involvement in this. These are other stories, but he's really in these. And so that's why we decided he had to be bigger on the trash pile on the moon. So we're making a statement too.
I love it. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. Gary, you are an absolute joy to talk to. You really are, my darling. And hopefully once I move, we'll be able to get you back on the show, and maybe we can do a little bit of a panel or something.
Yeah. I love
it. I will have to edit the details of our live stream, because where Facebook was playing up, I had to do it so quickly. I didn't have a chance to give all your information and links. But you can find Gary's reviews on the Midwest Book Reviews. He is all over the place. Do look him up. I will have all Gary's links attached as soon as I get a chance. And I can't wait to do this again, Gary. You are awesome.
We will do it again. I'm open to that. You know I am.
That would be fabulous. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Gary. Thank you, everybody, for watching and for your questions. If you don't get a chance to watch this live, don't worry. Pop your comments and questions in the comments, and we will try and get to them as soon as we can. And in the meantime, have a fantastic week, everybody, and we will see you again next time on the Witty Writers Show. See you later, everybody, and bye for now.